Jen will keep admitting people when we, as they join. So first of all, Jen just hit the record button. There are lots of people on this call, which is wonderful, but I know that there are many who can't make it at this time. So as a service to the companies that we provide EAP to, we'll record this session and provide the link to companies so that people that you know that you think, oh, they should have definitely listened to this and they didn't come, you can tell them there's a link up there and they can go and listen to it. The other thing is that I'll do most all of the talking today. That with a group this size, we probably won't have a lot of room for interaction. But if you do, if you do have something you want to say or want to have some input, there's a hand on the bottom of the Google meeting, and you can just raise your hand, and then Jen will let me know to stop talking for a minute and let somebody else have some airtime. So if you want to do that, you can do that. Otherwise, lots of action can happen in the chat while I'm presenting information. I might ask some questions you might want to chat on the side, and you just do that with the little chat button all the way over to the right. There are 3 little shapes. Those are tools, and right next to that on the left, just next to that on the left, is a little talk bubble, and that's the chat feature. If you click on that, you can type. Just know that everyone everyone on this meeting will be able to see what you're typing in there. That's not just directly to Jen. And I think that's the housekeeping stuff. We'll be together I'm going to try to shoot for about 45 minutes. If anybody on this call has ever heard me present before, you know I go long. I always go long. So I'm shooting for 45 minutes so that we're done certainly by 1. But I'd like to give you a little chance to maybe have some input or feedback at the end of the presentation. Jen put in the chat a couple of great resources. There is a quiz that you can take that will help you kind of figure out what your personality style is. What I've known is that a lot of people have taken personality quizzes in the back, different group team building exercises, things like that. Companies bring in this kind of information all the time. And they're all different names. You know, we have the Myers-Briggs, there's Personalysis, there's Platinum Rule, which is what a lot of our stuff is based on, Medicine Wheel, lots of different kinds, but they all boil down to the same 4 core personality styles. So the colors might look different from something you've experienced before if you've taken a test before, but the styles themselves will be familiar to you. So, okay, so I'm in my presentation now. We're going to talk about personalities at work. And Jen, just pipe in and cut me off if you need to add something or somebody would like to add something. This is a presentation by your EAP, Ascension Employee Assistance Program. The property or the material in this presentation is the property of Wisconsin Ascension EAP. If you want to use parts of it, you just need to let us know that. Please don't copy and take it and present it without us being aware of that. So talking about personality styles, power, control, innovation, or relationships. Each personality style prioritizes different things. And when you learn what your personality is, you also start to learn the way other people interact in the world. So knowing your personality style and knowing the style or having an idea about the style of others can really help you to operate well in the world. It can help you navigate relationships that might have been tough to navigate in the past. Today, we're going to give you a chance to think about what your own personality style is, ways to figure out the styles of other people. And I'm not saying diagnosing anybody. This is not a diagnosis kind of thing. It's really more of a personal awareness thing. But then understand how different personality styles kind of interact together. I'll ask you some questions about that and give you a chance to kind of reflect on that or talk about it in the chat. I think the first thing we want to talk about is that, the way we think the world should operate, who we are, is not the way everybody else is. I remember thinking that, when I was young in my career, why isn't everyone like me? Why don't they all like to brainstorm? Why don't they all like to just, sit down and come up with millions of ideas? And who are these people who like to take notes and organize this stuff? I don't understand those people at all. And I think that's was kind of my intro into the idea that different people have different personalities. Some want a lot of detail, some need the big picture, some want just the facts, and other people care very much about how the facts impact the other people on the team. So what people's feelings are, is everybody going to be okay? What are these changes going to do to people who might have some challenges on the team? So how do we know what they want? How do we know what other people want? This is not going to give you a detailed profile of your personality style. It's going to give you a chance, though, to recognize patterns of behavior. And once you have a sense of those patterns, you're going to realize that a lot of the interaction that you have with other people is not personal at all. It might feel rough to me if somebody is very, focused on the facts. And don't tell me about, your big idea. I want to know what the number is on that report or whatever. But that's not about not liking me. That's about what they need to operate well. And once I know that, I can take things less personally and interact with them more objectively. So there are 4 main personality styles. And if you take that quiz, you don't need to take that now. You can kind of just listen to all of this. And then you'll remember, I promise you'll remember if you take the quiz later. But the 4 styles are director, innovator, relator, and thinker. And I want to tell you that I thought forever that I was a relator. And I'll tell you a little bit about all these styles. It was only maybe 10 years ago that I took this test and realized, oh, that's not me at all. And the way that I realized I wasn't a relator is because when I go home at the end of the day, if the phone rings or someone sends me a text message, I don't pick it up. I'm all peopled out. I've spent all my people skill. And I felt really bad about that because I'm a counselor, darn it. I should want to interact with people. But when I found out what my real style was, I realized that there's some real good things about that style as well. I'll tell you that as we go. So the first style that we're going to talk about today is director. Some people call this style dictator. That is not at all the case. But directors can feel a little dominating in nature. They're pretty driven. They're focused on goals. They're not overly concerned with the mushy stuff. Now they'll cope with that, and they'll build relationships. They build relationships even more easily with some people than others. Directors line up well with thinkers because thinkers give detail. Directors like those facts. But the relationship people, sometimes directors might feel like, oh, you're just giving me a lot of, like you're just resisting this. And the facts say what the facts say. So sometimes relators don't feel like directors are the most easy people to interact with. Doesn't mean we can't learn how, but it does mean they can be a little bit more of a challenge for somebody who is a relationship-oriented person. Directors can be impatient. Sometimes they get bored. They're very often very comfortable with conflict. I don't want to say that globally every director is this way, but there are patterns definitely. And sometimes they can seem a little insensitive because they're moving ahead. We've got goals, we've got plans, we've got to get going. So just think for a minute, do you know any directors in your life? People who are very results-oriented, driven. What are the goals? What are the facts? Come on, let's move ahead. When you say, well, so-and-so seems a little afraid by this is the right thing for the company, we have to do this. Do you know anybody like that? How well do you relate to them? Are there things that you like about them? And are there challenges that you have with them? And if you want to put any of that in the chat, you can. And then as we're talking through this, we can come back and kind of talk about people's experience of the director. But director types often end up in leadership roles in companies, because not necessarily because they're good at that, but they are those people that get things going. So if you know somebody and you don't know for sure if they're a director, if you all go to a meeting together and sit around and nobody's really leading the meeting and nobody really knows what the goal of the meeting is, and directors will step up and just say, okay, what are we doing here today? What needs to get taken care of? Who is taking notes? They'll ask that. Who is taking the notes? Who is handling the tasks to be done after we leave?
And we're hearing in the chat that some people like that. They really like people who say what they want and are more upfront, especially in meetings.
Yeah, it helps to not have to guess, right? You don't have to mind read if people just tell you what they need and what they want, and what is important to them. But it can feel kind of rough if you're not used to that, or it's not somebody you have a lot of relationship with. So there's not that trust level. Then directors can feel a little bit rough to you, but they're very necessary. If the world was made up of all of my personality style, I promise you nothing would ever get done. So working with directors, if you know somebody like this and want to know, what can I do to work better with them? This is, let me step back a second and say, have y'all heard the golden rule? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you, right? This information is based on an axiom called the platinum rule. So what that says is do unto others as they would like you to do unto them. So it implies get to know people well enough that you know how they operate well, and speak to them the way that they can understand it and the way that they prefer to be spoken to. And that goes for you too. Then others should get to know you and understand the things that are important to you and be able to speak to you in a way that is meaningful and makes good sense and matters to you. So when we think about this, working with directors, that personality style, and we want to think about, what does a director want then? How do they want us to interact with them? This is how to work with a director. Get to the point. If you're writing an email to a director, a long paragraph is not the way to go. They don't usually have the attention span for that. Bullet points are good. Focus on facts, accomplishments, things that are done. And I'm not necessarily saying, like ask for kudos and just build yourself up, but things that have been accomplished in a process. So it doesn't mean you have to be, bragging or anything like that, but focusing on what's done so far. Give the opportunity for a director to lead. They are kind of always chomping at the bit to move things forward. So if you're comfortable with letting them lead, they like that spot, and they won't feel like they've been done unto because you let them lead. Like some other styles might feel that way. Be assertive with the director, stand your ground. It's okay. It's okay to say, wait, this is not feeling collaborative to me. This is what I need from you. It's okay. Directors need to know that too. We all have things to learn. So being assertive for yourself and standing your ground is important. If you don't do that, you're going to be managed. They're going to take over and just tell you what needs to be done. And then see their strengths. I mean, just like you were saying, Jen, and the people in the chat were saying, they like that. It's great to not have to read people's minds and to know that somebody is, moving this ahead, taking responsibility, moving it ahead. But on a dark day, on a day when a director is really stressed, sometimes they can be intimidator. And that's not an easy thing to work with. Directors don't like to lose. Sometimes they figure out ways that they have to get things done a certain way. They can take a strong posture. I know that that's not necessarily intended to hurt somebody, but it is intended to maybe call out a barrier and move past it. So directors, when they're under stress, need to really focus on demonstrating concern for others. Is there anybody in the group that thinks that they're a director? Yeah, a few. Jen, you're a director, huh? Barb? I think the other thing to know about this is nobody is purely one of these styles. I think we all have a little bit of all of them, but we have a kind of a prevalent style. And then we also have styles that we just had to learn. So I was not a director, I don't think, before I came to the work that I do now. But being even in my title, the director of the Employee Assistance Program, I need to be able to exhibit some of these skills to lead a large team. You know, there are 16 of us on this team, and if somebody doesn't take the lead, a lot of people are very relationship oriented, and we do a lot of talking. So I've learned to be a director, even though that wasn't my natural style. And I think people might notice that too for themselves, that they maybe had to learn some of those skills to make things move ahead in their workplace. So dealing with intimidation, we won't go into a lot of this detail, but if you're feeling it like you're intimidated by a director style, try to keep your emotions out of it. Try to build some confidence. Get your facts and figures straight before you go into conversations, because directors, you know, they don't always need to be right, but they need to know they know the right information. So holding your own can be seen as a very good thing with them. If you feel like you're being intimidated by a director, that's a great reason to contact EAP and talk to one of the counselors about some strategies and how to deal with that. The second personality style is thinker. And I have a little story I want to tell you about thinkers at the end of this, this section. So thinkers can sometimes look like perfectionists. I would never tell a thinker, I'm working on my budget right now, I would never tell a thinker somewhere between 40 and 80,000. They would probably, you know, lose their mind. That is just not okay. They need the detail. They need it specific. They need correct numbers. This about or approximately, or it seems like, those are not good things to say to a director. They want to be correct. They're, you know, just like directors are really tied to getting things moving forward and getting things done, thinkers need to have their facts straight. They want what they present to you or the information they give or share, they own from a very, like, this has got to be right perspective. So you won't find a lot of errors in their math. You won't find a lot of errors in anything that thinkers do because they've researched it well. They can be a little bit black and white. Gray area is harder for a thinker. It either makes sense or it doesn't. And that's not the case for the remaining two personality styles. So thinkers line up well with directors because they give a lot of the same information that directors like and need. So do you know any thinkers? How well do you relate to them? And are there challenges with the thinkers that you know? So I'm going to tell you a little story. I don't know if anybody is in this presentation from ODC in Wisconsin Rapids, but that was one of the very first presentations I did about personality styles. And I went there and did it in person with a pretty decent sized group of people. And after I did the presentation, a lady came up and I said, "Oh, did you want to talk about this?" And she said, "Yeah, I just want to tell you that I'm a thinker and I thought people didn't like me." And what she was understanding is when she was getting into the detail of things and the correctness of things and the importance of certain facts and the correctness of those facts, people would sort of zone out or they would walk away because it didn't fit with some of those other styles in her workplace. And so she had taken that very personally and thought that people just didn't like her and didn't care, you know, for whatever she was offering to the team. And she told me sometime after that it really changed her relationships with people because she kind of when she could, she would turn down the volume on that thinker style and try to be a little more free flowing. And the other people that she worked with came to appreciate much more that her input was about the success of the whole team, not just that she was trying to stall somebody because they didn't have the right number or the right answer. And I thought, that is the value of learning personality styles, to go from like feeling like I don't feel like I'm accepted here. I don't feel like people like me, to understanding that, wow, I think so differently than my closest workmates, that they don't know how to interact with me. So I think that was a pretty cool thing. And I know for me, sometimes thinkers can be just as intimidating as directors, because they'll start asking me details. And I'm much more of a, oh, it was about last summer sometime. And they say, no, what was the date? So that can be a little intimidating for me. When you work with thinkers, they're going to focus on logic over emotions. You want to provide them a lot of detail. You want to do your homework before you come to a thinker with a proposal. But then you want to give them time to think. Thinkers don't like to be put on the spot. And sometimes directors want to be nice and try to interact and include other people on the team. So they might call out a thinker and say, did you want to give us a little update on this or that? A thinker will not like that if they don't know what's coming ahead of time. They want to be prepared. They don't want to look incorrect or caught off guard. So giving them time to think is really important. Be patient with criticism. They are trying to make this right. They are not trying to say you are wrong. They are trying to make the process as foolproof and likely to succeed as possible. Because thinkers aren't necessarily disagreeing with the big idea. They just want to make sure your big idea is going to work. So you can see their strengths. They get all their bases covered. And the end result will be quality with a thinker. They've worked out all the bugs before we've even gone live with the project. So they can be a little bit of an interrogator on a bad day. It might feel like a do it my way, do it right. When they're stressed out, they can use questions to control situations. They can use questions to slow things down. They don't want things to fail. That's a hard thing for thinkers to deal with, is failed projects, failed teamwork, and personal failures on their work product. I think, and personally as well. But they don't get easily offended. Now, that doesn't mean you can, say whatever you want to anybody that you want. But if it's input based on fact, they're not going to have hurt feelings by that. They're going to care for the fact. So if you are a thinker and you're having a bad day, the thing to focus on is trying to be a little bit more flexible and give up control. There will be time to work out the details, and you will certainly be on that subcommittee, because thinkers kind of gravitate to that kind of work. So if you're working with somebody who's a thinker on a bad day and it feels to you like they're interrogating you, you can ask them, respond to their questions with questions. So what is this contribution margin? If I'm asked that, I might say, tell me why that number is really important to you. Tell me, not that why are you so mean to me is not the appropriate question to respond with, but, help me understand why you're going down that path. Being direct with them is important. Sometimes in personal life, you might have some off-limit topics with people who can be interrogators. You are not at the mercy of every thinker. And while they can be very, very helpful and ensure a lot of success at work, sometimes in personal life, thinkers are getting more information or asking for information that they don't need. So it's okay to be assertive and draw some boundaries with them. So do you have any thinkers in your life? Are you a thinker? And what is it like to deal with others who are not thinkers? You can put that in the chat if you'd like. And if somebody I'm just seeing a little snippet. Yes, finance. I think a lot of people in finance are thinkers, because you don't kind of do approximates in finance, or not very often anyway, right? But I think that's a place where thinkers feel very comfortable. So the next personality style is innovators. And I told you in the beginning that I thought that I was a relationship person. That's the last one we're going to talk about. That's, I think, what most people kind of land on when they're guessing what they are before they take the test. But when I finally took the test, I found that I am an innovator. So this is kind of a free spirit person, which doesn't match up with my director job very much at all, except that it does when other people want input. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. Free spirits, they don't like limitations. They love possibility. They don't always like to make decisions. They really just want a lot of choices. Innovators are inquisitive. They're brainstorming in nature. If any of you worked with Leah when she was still in the program, or Jen is getting a lot of this from me now. Jen, I just want to call you and brainstorm. Can you take notes? Can you keep track of this, and then we'll come up with something with it later? So spontaneous, can be kind of playful and fun in the workplace, but innovators don't always follow through well. When I have to take notes and write it up as a proposal, that's the part of the work I don't like. I like to come up with the big ideas. I like to tell you how there will be 10 choices in this, but I don't love to write it all down and write down the steps and think through the possible bugs in the system. That stuff isn't as fun for an innovator. We don't get into the detail as much. We kind of want the big picture, the gist of things. What's the big idea, I ask a lot of times. Now, having said that, though, I want to say that as an innovator personally, I am the first person to catch a typo in a document. I don't know why that is. So it doesn't mean that innovators can't focus on detail. It's just not the realm we like to operate in. We can be emotional, dramatic, entertaining, charismatic, all the very favorite things that I think are important. But sometimes those things can be a little bit disruptive in a meeting, right? Especially when you already know what the plan is and where you're going. And innovators want to tell you all the detours you could take for the scenic route. So do you know any innovators? How do you deal with them? Is it easy to work with an innovator? Sometimes it can be hard to pin them down. What do you like about them? Innovators will say yes before you have finished asking the question, because they are certain that there's no puzzle that can't be solved. I've said that 100 times. But there can be challenges with innovators. Sometimes sometimes they don't feel very steady. They don't follow through. Maybe they don't get their homework done for the meeting. And we all have to take responsibility and do the things we don't like as well. Innovators tend to kind of float around in that area they love to operate in. And sometimes they don't have a lot of self-discipline, maybe would be a good way to put it, to do the things that they don't love to do so much.
So a couple of people in the chat are saying sometimes they can be frustrating. They can find themselves being impatient with them.
Yeah.
Maybe because they are in that creative mode that they don't like you're saying, like, come back down and what are we supposed to do, or what is this, like something more definitive. And Jenny says sometimes I have to bring them off the ledge. I hope that means just because they're flying off into big ideas, and that you need lots of reminders for them, because they are sometimes big picture and they get scattered. So then you have to be like, oh no, wait.
Yep. I love, Barb is saying I'm an innovative thinker. That is a really cool combination, but you must give yourself a headache sometimes, because those things can, squirrel, because you're going in both directions, right? You're thinking of all the possibilities, but then another side of you is saying, wait, I gotta check the facts on these. I gotta make sure it's really gonna work. So usually innovators have other people doing that, kind of pushing back on them to do that, which can be can be helpful. Innovators need to know that people might appreciate their creativity, but once in a while, please rein it in, right? We've got things that have to get done. So engaging with an innovator, avoid details, give the big picture. As an innovator, I can tell you that when I get long emails, I can't read them. I have to set them aside or put a star on them and go back to them. And, I will be distracted by anything. So Tracy, you say squirrel. Exactly. Anything that might be fun. So we give lots of choices versus commands. We don't say, do this now. We do say, would you mind? Or what do you think you might be able to do for me here? And I can tell you, if you have an innovator who is your leader, that can be very difficult because they don't give you a lot of clear direction all the time about what they want from you. And I know I have caused craziness on my team doing that. So I'll have in EAP, we try to do appointments that are all over the clock so that people can get in at convenient times for themselves. And then I'll hear from somebody who might say like, oh, I'm doing all these evening work and I'm not even getting to spend time with my family, but I know you want us to see people who need evening appointments and I don't know what to do. And they're asking me to tell them what to do. What they get from me is, wow, yeah, I see that. I want to spend time with my family too. So what are some ways we can do both? Can we, do you ever think about like moving your lunch hour to the end of the day or early in the day so that you can see people on a lunch hour instead of maybe end of day? Or do you think you might be able to do this or that? And I find that that might be a little stressful at first for people to hear their leader saying, like, I don't know, what do you think we could do? But don't get me wrong, I know what our goals are on our team. So even as an innovator, I know customer satisfaction is super important and getting in at a good time of day, when you have time to talk is really important. So, an innovator who is functioning in a pretty healthy space can handle both of those things. And that personally, I know you didn't come to hear all about me today, but personally, that's what I've done. I'm naturally an innovator who has learned how to live like a director. So I ask a lot of questions. What do you think? I know there's a way to fix this. Oh, there's so many possibilities, but I know that at the end of the day, the buck stops with me and I have to make sure that everything gets done. So it's a odd combination because as people kind of line up together, I told you directors really line up with thinkers. They speak the same language. They're very comfortable with each other. Directors and innovators, that's a little more difficult relationship. So for that to be, just like you were saying before, Barb, the innovator thinker, that's a combination that can give you a bit of a headache, but it's a great thing to have, especially if you're in a healthy space and are using that, all the positive sides of that. So when innovators are having a bad day, they get aloof. So if you know somebody who is super creative and really, has lots of ideas and it brainstorms a lot, they're probably an innovator. And when they feel unappreciated or maybe they feel offended somehow, they become aloof. So they become more sensitive, even more easily offended. Sometimes they can get overwhelmed. I can tell you that I know lots of innovators that when they get overwhelmed, they start making lists. And it's not just one list, right? It's my work list that has to be done right now. It's my work list that are the big long goals. It's my home list, what I have to get done when I get home. It's my grocery list. It's everything because I'm overwhelmed. There's so many thoughts in my head, so many thoughts in an innovator's head that they need to get that sorted out, and making lists is a good way to do that. Innovators want their feelings validated. They don't like criticism. And the big challenge for an innovator is to kind of regulate their own emotions. So we can't let our emotions lead us. We can't have a tantrum, although our tantrums are much more about giving the cold shoulder. but we need to regulate our emotions and kind of look difficulty in the eye. So when you are dealing with an innovator who might be aloof, call it out loud. I'm not trying to hurt you, but we have to get something done here, or just kind of saying the obvious, asking the question, what is going on with you? You seem to have disengaged. What happened there? But don't get defensive or critical, because they'll take that on more themselves. Let them know it's safe for them to be honest. So I think that's something that innovators always want to give the good news. And sometimes it's really hard for us to give the bad news. Like, I don't feel appreciated, or I feel on the outside. Innovators sometimes can go there. Like, if conversations are happening or meetings are happening and they're not in those meetings, why am I being excluded? Why don't people care what I have to say? But maybe we've done all that creating, and now we need the thinkers to get together to make the action plan, or we need the director to come up with the end goal. So it's important that you let them know it's safe for them to be honest, but they're not always going to need to be in the thick of things, because we can't brainstorm everything every minute, every day. Otherwise, things won't get done. And it's important to be assertive with people who are innovators. Sometimes we just have to, especially with thinkers who might get a little bit stressed by all that creativity. It's important to say, we've defined the project now. Now we have to move forward. We can't keep on recreating it. It's okay to do that. The last personality style is a personality style that I think lots of us think we are right at the beginning. But once you've heard the other styles or taken the quiz, you might think like, oh, maybe I'm not exactly this style. So this style is the relator. Relators are great to have on teams. They value relationships. They build rapport with team members. So relators are the ones that come in and say, we should have a birthday club. We should, we should get together after work. We should, this and that, to recognize each other as people. So they're sensitive to others. They're peacemakers. Relators don't like conflict. So directors aren't afraid of conflict. So when a director will call something out like that cannot happen, or I don't like that, or create some kind of conflict, relators kind of shrink back from that. They don't like that. They focus on personal growth and development. So they're kind of looking at themselves and how they can be better, and new things they can learn, and how they can contribute to the team in new ways each day. If you know any relators, these are the people who, after the meeting where something kind of intense has been announced, relators will go around and say, are you okay? I know she said now we're going to all have to work till 7 p.m. Do you have daycare? What are you going to do with your little ones? So that sounds a little gossipy, but relators in their most sincere place really care about other people. They're always looking out for other people. So it's good to have a relator, because you have an innovator who thinks anything is possible, a thinker who can make it happen if you give me enough of the correct facts and give me time to think it out, and a director who's making that happen on Tuesday, right? That's got to happen now. You need relators, otherwise everybody gets lost in the mix of, I didn't feel appreciated, I don't feel safe, I don't feel understood. So relators are really important people to have on the team, but there can be challenges with them, right? So when you relate to a relator, when you're interacting with somebody who is very relationship focused, an important thing is to slow down. There's so many relators on the EAP team, and the epitome of relator for me is Gary. He lives up in Wausau, and Gary will call me and he'll need to tell me that the sky is falling, but he will spend the first 2 minutes of the call saying, how are you? How is your husband? How are the kids? Meaning the dogs. The cow's okay. So he focuses on, I am with you, Rae Ann. I know who you are. I have a relationship with you, before he gets into anything that I would say like that's important, And I think, oh, Gary, you don't have to ask me all that, but he really does, because he really cares. So he builds rapport. Very tactful people. Relators aren't terribly blunt because they don't want to hurt other people's feelings. And they are very tolerant of the process versus the goal. So that's another thing that can be a challenge between relators and directors. You know, directors are working on that goal, and relators are saying, we're getting there, we're getting there. You know, a couple more meetings, we'll have this. So you have to kind of challenge a relator to be assertive. They're not always terribly assertive, but their strengths are that they become the glue that kind of holds the group together. They notice everyone else's personality style if they're in a place to do that, and can see when people start to disengage or feel hurt or not participate as much. So they keep the team working together. But
in the chat, it says, but they sometimes have a hard time taking care of themselves because they're
yeah,
always taking care of everybody else.
absolutely, absolutely. And on a bad day, relators can become poor me. You know, nobody appreciates what I do. They don't, you know, they don't see me for how hard I work. They, they reject help when it's offered to them and don't take very good care of themselves. So, you know, we kind of are the helpers, right? The relators are the helpers who spend all of themselves and then feel hurt that nobody rushed in, no other relator rushed in to save them. So they don't like to have to depend on other people. They like to be the helper, not the helped. And when things get challenging for them, they need to kind of develop a little thicker skin and ask for help so that they don't become the martyr on the team. I think sometimes relators become the martyr on the team because, you know, when things go wrong, people start taking it personally, and then that doesn't feel good at all for a relator. So then they feel like they failed. Their team's not working together. So dealing with the guilt trip, you'll get a guilt trip from a relator if they're not in a good place. So ask directly about their reluctance to let you help. Why won't you let me help you with this? Why won't you delegate a little bit of this project? Can you trust me to do a piece of this for you? Validate the relationship. You know, we've been through thick and thin together for a long time. And I know we can get through this too. Let them know you want to solve problems rather than rehash what they've done or what, you know, the decisions or the input that they've made. So really, to deal with a relator in a bad place is to take it back out of the personal realm and talk about the objective nature of what you're working on together. You have to be tactfully assertive with relators when they're in a bad spot. So a little quiz for you now. You've heard the 4 personality styles: director, very action-oriented and goal-oriented. Thinker, wants the details, wants to make sure it's right. Innovator, all the possibilities. And relator, you know, we need to do this together. I want to make sure everybody's okay. So thinking about those 4 personality styles, just a little quiz for you. Who said it? Who will drive? What kind of gas mileage does your car get? You drive. I'll take my own car. And I think some of these can be more than one style, but you know, the second one, what kind of gas mileage does your car get? That's probably a thinker, right? Innovators probably would say you drive because we're all distracted on what's on the side of the road. Directors might say who will drive or where we're going. And thinkers, or I'm sorry, relators would not say I'll take my own car. Relators are going to go with the team, right? So yeah, just some ideas of how people might interact with each other. Who said it? Think of all the things this committee could do. That's an innovator. You will be on the committee. Who said that? When does this committee meet? Who's going to be on it? What are the goals? And who wants to be on the committee? Relators want to know that you want to be part of it. So relators will ask, who wants to do this? Are there any volunteers? They kind of get disappointed sometimes when people don't engage right away because they're engaging. So the golden rule versus the platinum rule. I said this in the very beginning. We just have a couple minutes left, but I want to remind you, this is probably if you take anything from this training today, this is probably the thing to take. That the golden rule, do unto others as you want them to do unto you, is a great rule. But when it comes to working with other people in teams, at work, even at home, or in other social settings, the platinum rule works better. Do unto others as they want to be done unto. So that means get to know them a little bit, get to know yourself a little bit, what your style really is, and then understand what their style is, and try to interact with them in a way that is respectful of their style, but manages the dark side of that style as well. I mean, we all have those days, right, where things just don't feel right. You just don't feel like you're part of the team, or that you're valued. Those kind of days, and I want to be interacting with somebody who gets that about me and can handle that constructively, not just say, "Oh, you poor thing." So some considerations that you can take with you from this presentation. How would you present information differently to a director and a relator? I think that's a big one. With a relator, you might start out saying, we're not going to let anybody behind. I'm going to make sure that everybody can cope with the changes that I'm asking to happen. So I would talk about how it impacts the people rather than just the things that are getting done and when they're getting done. What different advice would you ask for from a thinker versus an innovator? See, those are so different, right? And a thinker can be creative, but where they excel is in the facts and the specifics and the correctness of things. How would an innovator respond to compliments versus a thinker? A thinker might say, I'm just doing my job. An innovator is going to love that somebody noticed how creative they are. Who would you prefer to get feedback from? Excuse me, a director or a relator, and why? And I think we talked about that. Directors kind of often get the short end of the stick because they can be the most blunt and direct. But there's value in that, especially in a workplace that is asking people to get so much done so fast, more than one person can do. So directors can kind of pare that down to what the real goal is. So platinum rule considerations. How will you use this information in your personal and professional life? As you were listening to these personality styles, were you thinking of anybody specifically that you think, oh, I know how I'm going to handle this the next time I see them, or the next time we have a disagreement, or we're working together? Is there anybody like that you don't have to put any names in the chat, but are you thinking of people like that? What is one thing that you might do differently as a result of this session? So in summary, your relationships will improve if you know your own personality style. I think lots of times we think about, oh, now I know who they possibly are, and I'm going to talk to them differently. But I think the very first place to start is to start with knowing who you are and what you need. Because I think sometimes when we feel like we're on the outs with people, it's because we've gone kind of to that a little bit darker side of our personality, where we're not quite as healthy and maybe not making the best decisions or judgments because we're maybe overstressed or something like that. So knowing your own personality is super important. It's easy to discover other people's personalities when you pay attention. It's not rocket science. People tell on themselves all the time, and all you have to do is just listen and you'll learn a lot about them. Even asking just a couple of questions can give you some very great clues about the personality styles of others. And then finally, you can adapt your style to be more influential and have better relationships with other people. So your natural style is a great thing, and it's good to know that. But if you're needing to work with somebody who's a different style, to kind of know what you can do to get them engaged and work with them is really an important thing. So that can help you feel more influential and have better outcomes in some of the work that you might do at work and at home. I think sometimes I look at children that I have in my life and wonder about what personality and style they're going to be as an adult, because I think as a child it shines through very clearly. So does anybody have any questions or any input from the information we had presented today? I think Jen has offered that she put the quiz in the chat, so you can click on the quiz, or if you don't get it, you can contact Jen or Rae, and we can get that out to you as well by email. You can do, we'll just.
Yep, I did it several different ways. I've put like the whole thing actually in the chat if you want to just copy and paste it and mail it to whoever your wellness coordinator is.
Excellent.
Otherwise, I also sent the link and then realized that there are some people external to us that can't access Google. So when we complete this today, I will send the recording along with the link for the personality assessment and for the quiz. If your company does this, you may not have this. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just ignore it. But if you have the wellness points at your company, that will also be attached.
Right. So I can take the personality assessment to learn my personality style, but I don't have to take the quiz unless I'm wanting wellness points from my company.
Well, and your company may or may not offer it. So that's why I'm saying if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's because your company doesn't do it.
All right. Great. Thank you so much for being with us today. It was a great group. If you have any questions about this material or would like to talk about it further, you know, if it's brought up something like, oh, now I get it, now I see what the problem is, by all means, contact us at EAP. I have up on the screen the phone number, the email, and there's some great resources on our website as well. So you are encouraged to go to the website and see what great things you can find there. Marathon County Quiz is added to the county's wellness portal as well. So if you send the information